Hello, I'm Gemma and this is Non-Fic Books, and I'd just like to start out with a huge thank you to both Ange and Hannah, who I will leave their links down to their channels below, who both shouted me out this weekend, and I woke up on Saturday morning to some really lovely things, so thank you very much both of you. And hello to everyone who came over from their shoutouts. Thank you very much for coming over and checking me out. And today I'm going to be doing a review of Agatha Christie, Agatha Christie's autobiography. This was originally published in 1977, a year after her death, but this particular copy is the 25th anniversary edition published by HarperCollins, and it's 551 pages, so it's a really nice, good length book where you can really get enough detail to really get a sense of her life. And this was written while she was around 75 or so on an archaeological dig with her husband Max Mallowan. And it starts off from her childhood going through up until that point in time. But she says through the book that she has just written this. She's not going to go back and alter what she's written or really edit it that much. I'm sure there were professional editors involved, but she didn't go back and reevaluate what she'd written. So this really is her remembrances across her life. And throughout, her voice is so warm and genuine, and you really do feel as if you're getting a sense of the woman. And if you know any of her fiction, you'll know she has a beautiful way with words, and if anything, this is probably the most beautiful thing of hers that I've read. I think the prose is just really stunning and very, very easy to read. And you do get a very, very strong voice off her. It's one thing, I read this over 3 days, and by the end I was dragging it out as long as possible because I did not want to let her voice go, because I had totally fallen in love with her. And I just have to show you a couple of the pictures from the middle because she was absolutely gorgeous. Look at these wonderful photographs. And the main focus of the book starts off while she's a child, and you actually get a large emphasis on her younger years, through her childhood, into her teenage years, and then onto her first marriage to Mr. Christie. And because there's no dates really throughout most of the book, you read about 2/3 of the book and then you realise she's still actually only a fairly young woman, maybe late 20s, early 30s. And the latter years of her life are quite condensed at the end, which is a bit of a shame because she was highly involved through her second husband with archaeological work, and they both went on digs in Iran and across the Middle East where he ran the excavations, and she actually did a large amount of processing the finds and the photography for the site, which, as my background has always been in archaeology, I think that is absolutely fascinating. So it's a little bit sad that that was quite so short at the end because it was just so fascinating. The beginning part is really quite interesting because you do get a lot of opinions of her family life and the way she grew up, and her elders were Victorians. So it's quite interesting because she's crossed over from the Victorian into the more modern, and you can see quite an interesting way of looking at it. We think of Victorians as very repressed and it's a lot more negative. We've come a long way and it's all positive, whereas she has a few things that she highlights that may actually have been better at that point, and I think it's really fascinating to see that sort of aspect. The big elephant in the room is the writing, which barely appears at all. You can really tell that it is an autobiography because it is focused on what she really thinks is important, and that's very clearly her friends and family. But the writing is barely mentioned. You've got little snippets where she's like, oh, I wanted to call my detective Hercules, but that didn't work, and so it went Hercule. And then it's not really mentioned very much. There's the odd snippet about where she was writing and not really having an office for most of her life. So most of her books were written on the edge of the dining room table, on a washstand, anywhere where she could put her typewriter. And considering that's what if you're picking this book up, that's probably why you're picking it up. It's because of her writing and the love of her detective fiction. And it's really interesting to see how little that really highlights in her remembrances of her life. and how much to her it was very much a job that she was required to do. And we don't always like hearing that from favourite authors, but I thought she was really honest about that, which I really, really liked. And the other big area, which is slightly less surprising, the missing 11 days, where with the problems with Her Majesty then disappeared for 11 days and was found in Harrogate, aren't mentioned at all. There's one line where she suggests that she knows what it's like to have a mental breakdown when she's discussing someone else's mental breakdown, and that's it. That's the only reference to that small period of her life, which has become one of the most famous. That's not really too surprising because she never spoke about it, but it could be a bit frustrating because I know that for a lot of people that is a really fascinating part of her life. This book is a really, really wonderful read. Her life was fascinating, and I think she lived through one of the most interesting periods of change, growing up in a post-Victorian through till a much more modern setting. The change that she had throughout her life and what she experienced was fantastic, and she's got a really warm, rich way of viewing the world that I really think would appeal to a lot of people. I highly recommend picking up this book, whether you're interested in Agatha Christie herself, whether you're interested in autobiographies or just this time period. I would really recommend this. It's one of the best books I've read this month, and I have read some really, really interesting books so far this month, and I highly recommend you check it out. If you have any questions or comments, please do leave them down below, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye!